Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining Flowing CrossBorder with Rob Keve, CEO of Flow, and Nikki Davidson, Senior Manager Digital, Ulla Johnson. As a reminder, if you have any questions, please submit them using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Here's your host, Deborah Weinswig, CEO and founder of Coresight Research.
Drew, thank you so much. We are so excited to have everybody here today. This is an amazing opportunity to learn more about cross-border e-commerce. I'm honored to be here with customer experience pioneer Rob Keve, CEO of Flow, and seasoned fashion and beauty e-commerce leader Nikki Davidson, Senior Manager of Digital at Ulla Johnson, a brand many of us know and love, to deep dive into the extremely timely topic of cross-border e-commerce. Right now at Coresight, I would tell you that about a third of our retail clients are focused on this particular topic, especially as we start to look to holiday, if we can already believe it, holiday 21. It is projected that cross-border e-commerce will see impressive growth this year, outpacing that of domestic e-commerce, as the pandemic is proving to be a primary driver of this trend. We're particularly seeing increased interest in Southeast Asia, and I would say so far in 21, and who knows what the rest of the year holds for us. Many brands with global ambitions are using these unprecedented times, really as an opportunity to diversify their markets and, from a Wall Street perspective, right, market risk, and also looking at new business models that they're learning in other markets, and then also bringing those back to their home market. Global e-commerce will continue to be an important channel to grow online sales as brands are really realizing the competitive advantage it provides and attracting and also converting international customers who may not be as easy for them to experience the kind of in-person experience if they were tourists, let's say. That being said, many global brands still have not embraced the tailwinds driving the reality of cross-border. And I think there's also still, not from just a tech perspective, but also just from an opportunity perspective, a lot that all of us can learn, and it's really changing every day. Today, we're going to cover 3 key incentives for retailers to consider as they're taking their businesses cross-border this year and in the future. So, right, number one, the current pandemic has really accelerated online shopping habits for international products. We're continuing to see unprecedented demand in, really markets around the world for, US-made goods. And what we're also seeing is that online shoppers have become increasingly more comfortable with purchasing from overseas retailers, and cross-border shopping is expected to continue to see impressive growth in 21. Right, there's new areas of retail, but there's also new ways to sell products as well, and that's what we're seeing with the cross-border perspective. And then we're going to, kind of look at, how e-commerce will continue to be an important channel just in general to grow online sales as brands realize the competitive advantage. So before we kind of get into the meat and the deck for today, I think we're going to launch a poll. So we encourage you to respond. And I think we're going to, jump in. And, I think we're going to start with some questions and, kind of also look at, some of the areas that, kind of e-commerce is covering. I mean, Stephen, I'm going to pick on you for a minute in terms of, did this percentage of e-commerce sales, did this surprise you?
Jump in. Hi, everyone. So we're seeing 22% of global cross-border e-commerce market share for 2022. That's our projection. And this kind of aligns with, what we had predicted last year. There was a bit of a slowdown, I would say, during the pandemic for cross-border shopping, but the growth and the market share continues to accelerate. And now we're seeing a lot of opportunity for companies like Flow to provide kind of a turnkey solution to aid in this, a trend of cross-border shopping. And as we see on the right, the appetite is definitely strong across these marketplaces, and different brands and products are resonating more so than others. In this graphic here, we're looking at Amazon, AliExpress, eBay, Wish, but really some of the brands have also seen significant traction in selling direct. And one of the reasons we have Flow and Ulla Johnson on this call with us today is to discuss how a brand like Ulla Johnson is able to leverage the technology that Flow has to offer to facilitate that cross-border transaction. It does not need to just happen on one of these marketplaces. There's actually opportunities for brands to go direct. And I think the appetite for that is growing, especially as we come out of this this period of the post-COVID world that we're in right now.
You know, it's interesting, Stephen, we had a call last night with a distribution and logistics provider. And what they were saying is that, you know, the consumer, right, because of this, you know, almost this authenticity in terms of the relationship between the brand and the consumer. And right, what we're even seeing is, right, like handwritten notes sometimes, or kind of, you know, this, you know, unexpected gift with purchase. And that's coming when we're seeing brands go direct. And so they, you know, they were saying, and I prepped ahead of the call for today, just, you know, in terms of, they think that the biggest growth will actually be in retailers, brands, and manufacturers going direct to consumer through a cross-border perspective. So I think that, you know, this is incredibly timely, and that, you know, I think that our expectations, what we believe will be right now, I think it'll be even higher in terms of the growth and the percentage penetration of cross-border as we look to the year ahead. Mm-hmm. And, you know, should we jump to the next slide, which I think is incredibly interesting as we look at, you know, the kind of percentage, you know, kind of representation of different product categories. You know, we've always seen, you know, kind of a significant demand for, you know, for beauty. And I think that that's continuing to evolve into, you know, demand, especially as you've got these lifestyle brands like an Ulla Johnson, where we're seeing kind of this, you know, kind of clothing, footwear, and accessories is growing quite rapidly. What was your, you know, kind of key like aha from this slide?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's really interesting to see some of these categories that are growing that were not at this level previous years, whether it's the cosmetics and beauty, the jewelry, sports and equipment, definitely saw some growth there. So we're seeing, I think, more openness from global consumers to explore different products, which is opening up the opportunity for brands across different categories to sell direct. So there isn't, you know, one or two, you know, of course, clothing and footwear has always been kind of the leader, but we're seeing these other categories slowly start to increase their penetration and traction. So that was kind of my takeaway. And you know, I was just looking at the poll results actually, and you know, it's interesting to see here that of the people that answered that are brands that are selling cross-border, there's about half the brands answered that they're selling cross-border right now today. Just Rob, does that surprise you at all?
You know, I think it's quite interesting. And Rob, I mean, is this kind of in line with what you expected, or would you have expected it to be higher?
I mean, it is very much a function of the maturity of the brand, how cross-border ready they are, and how much traffic they're already attracting from overseas. So it's hard to generalize without knowing the size of the respondents. But when we look at, say, the IO 1000, the top 1,000 US-based e-commerce businesses, the vast majority are doing some form of cross-border selling now, post-COVID. So I think, if anything, this underrepresents what's happening in the wider marketplace, particularly the more ambitious and the larger brands.
Well, but it is interesting, right, Rob, is that 20%, you know, kind of expect to, in the next 3 to 6 months, I assume, as everyone's kind of revving up for holiday 21, that, I mean, that's a lot of retailers, brands, manufacturers who are looking to kind of go to new markets where they theoretically haven't been before. What does the education process look like as, you know, these brands are getting ready?
That's a good question. I think first is there's something on the demand side and something on the supply side. So on the demand side, it's understanding their motivation, understanding whether they're trying to target certain regions or countries or just capitalize on global traffic hitting their site, getting a sense for how big they think their market opportunity is globally, and spending time analyzing with them the traffic that's already hitting their site even before paid marketing. And that gives them a sense of the order of magnitude for the opportunity. I think on the supply side, the conversations we have with them are, how simple would you like this to be? With Flow, it can be turnkey, as Stephen said. If you choose to go a different approach, you have to invest in a lot of parts of your consumer offering, from shipping to checkout to the consumer experience on the site. And there's lots of nuance that someone like Nikki at Ulla would have thought through around which currency, what rounding, shall we include duties and taxes or not? How should we support our customers on returns and service? So making sure that brands think through these questions before they go international, because whilst technically it's a question of flicking a switch, from a customer experience perspective, there's a host of questions you want to get right, or as close to right as you can out of the box.
Well, and it was interesting based on my conversation last night, right? The, kind of biggest pain point for, retailers on the poll was, right, fast and kind of cost-effective shipping. And, there's so many challenges we're seeing right now in the supply chain that, I think we're going to see new models evolve. And certainly is that one of the top questions that you're getting right now?
It's been a question that, obviously popped in Q2, Q3 last year as carriers were under enormous pressure as COVID first hit. I think now we're getting back to a more steady state of it's important. We want it to be efficient. We want a good customer experience, as close to a strong experience internationally as we have domestically. We want rates to be compelling because expensive shipping will certainly depress conversion rates. But alongside other customer experience aspects, which are crucial to get it right internationally, what are the right price points? Should we include duties and taxes? What are the duties and taxes so we can sell landed cost, prepaid? How can we make sure the right payment methods are available across the world? How can we ensure the reverse logistics is well managed so that customers can return and we can service them internationally? I think many brands give us so much thought to their value proposition and customer promise domestically. And that's the heart of their question. How can we mirror that across 200 different countries as closely as possible?
And Nikki, can you just speak to the, as you were thinking about going cross-border, right, kind of this mental checklist and how Flow helped you kind of think through not only the, I would say the challenges, but also the opportunities?
Yeah, certainly. So, prior to launching with Flow, we were using a different international shipping provider that became a CX headache for us. We weren't really owning the CX component of international. And we saw that it was a big interest, and there was kind of interest globally from some of our wholesale partners who created some brand awareness on a global scale. So we really started to look at traffic increases from all over the world and really knew that there was more potential to tap into and really lean in. But what we were seeing was we didn't really have the tools in our toolbox to really give that direct to consumer experience that we were giving to our domestic customers. So for us, it was really the increase in traffic, some of the brand awareness we were seeing globally from our wholesale partners. And then, it's actually funny, you were saying that some businesses saw a decline with global commerce in the height of the pandemic and everything going on with COVID, but we've actually seen quite the opposite. We've been very lucky in that sense. The pandemic has really seemed to accelerate our global business. I think there's a true connection to our brand about being aspirational, being takeaway, being this kind of ethereal lifestyle brand that people envision, for just connecting to want to travel, to want to go somewhere. So I think that that's all kind of helped compel our international business forward.
But it's also interesting, Nikki, because as I think what's been so smart, right? If you can outsource this to Flow, right, and then you can continue to focus on, right, the brand image and building the brand, that's kind of the best of all worlds because you're obviously an expert in one area and Flow's an expert in another. Do you think that also has helped drive your international success?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. The logistics and fulfillment side of shipping internationally, dealing with commercial invoices, dealing with DDU versus DDP. I mean, it takes a real expert to understand those kind of considerations and how you want to approach global commerce. So for us, Flow, it really was quite turnkey. They give you the options and you kind of pick and choose what's right for your consumer and your customer and your business overall. So I mean, we can get into some of the features and functionality that we really optimized and leveraged to our advantage, but also, I think first and foremost, logistics and ownership of the customer were two of the most kind of compelling changes when switching over to Flow.
No, that's fantastic. And, if we look at this kind of, 5 signs that a brand is ready to go global, Rob, is there one here that's more important than another?
Our starting point in discussions is always the first, and it's the easiest to look at. How much of your site traffic is already coming from overseas? Usually that's before there's any international paid marketing. So this is just organic traffic that's hitting your site, whether that's through word of mouth or they found it through search and discovery. And looking at the site traffic percentage that's coming from overseas and comparing that to your sales that's coming from overseas. And to the extent there's a discrepancy, that's an immediate opportunity, that's low-hanging fruit. So many times we'll speak to brands and 20% of their traffic or more is already coming from overseas. And yet when they look at their sales reports, 5% or less of the sales is coming from overseas. So clearly there's a conversion issue there, and that talks to the customer experience. It's probably not clean. Maybe prices aren't presented in local currency. Maybe duties and taxes aren't showing. Maybe shipping isn't cheap. Maybe the wrong payment methods. And so what we want to do is help brands close that arbitrage and capture that immediate low-hanging fruit.
Great. And I guess I have one more question as we're kind of moving to the next slide. Do you feel that, and maybe Nikki is even better to kind of address this, right? With social media and this ability to build a brand awareness in kind of a new way. Nikki, how did that kind of, if you will, drive once again this kind of excitement and seamlessness in terms of going global?
Yeah, I think that social media has propelled people to and consumers especially to want things immediately. They place an order, their expectations of receiving goods are 2 to 5 business days. And, prior to being on Flow, we were experiencing with international specifically, all of our shipments had to be consolidated at a warehouse in California and then shipped to Europe, to Australia. So you can imagine that added significant lead time to a lot of our shipments. And then the price too, the cost of shipping to some countries that are not close, it's quite a lot. So using Flow helped with our rate. Ultimately, when working with Flow, you get access to rates that are just unimaginable for a global consumer. I think sometimes, customers in Europe are receiving our product within 3 days at a $10 shipping rate. And that's just unheard of, I think, a few years ago. So it's really exciting for us to be able to deliver upon that immediacy that people are engaging with on social media.
But I think what's even more important is, if you were to have a group, well, even, kind of all of us on this call today, to tell people that they can, kind of go global, it's 3-day shipping for $10. I mean, even that is just kind of some data that's truly, even sometimes domestically, it's 3 days and $10. So to be able to
absolutely,
this entirely new audience, that is, and once again, this power of social media for your brand to kind of be, truly global. It seems like such a huge opportunity. So once again, as you've kind of, moved over to work with Flow, can you just talk a little bit about how your business has changed, cadence, anything in terms of, what you're seeing with regards to demand, et cetera?
Yeah. So, I think one of the key functionalities for us is, as I mentioned before, we have some wholesale partners globally, and we really want to honor the price books that are given to wholesale partners during markets and within our wholesale world. So just for anybody who's not aware of maybe what a price book is, we set certain rates so that our pricing is competitive and that they are not being hit with high conversion rates. So our dress that might be, $5.95 here is in $7.95 in the UK. So we set price books for our wholesale partners, and something that we've been really able to leverage with Flow is setting price books in currencies where we may have wholesale partners, and then in other currencies or other countries having that flexibility to not have to have price books if we don't have them, and to set a market rate. So that's been something that we've really been able to optimize and use to our advantage. DDP is huge for us. Previously, customers had the ability to pay DDU, meaning taxes and duties were unpaid. And that just posed a challenge when somebody would receive a good and on their doorstep and they owed $200 in taxes and duties. Nobody wants to get hit with that kind of bill on delivery. So, I think that the transparency level of what duties and taxes will be, and also we've been able to kind of A/B test where throughout the site experience we've been able to show the consumer what duties and taxes would be. Sometimes we would bake it into the price that they're seeing, and other times we would break it out separately and try and see what that engagement was. So I think those are two primary features that we've really been able to optimize. And then, I think out of the box, a really big feature of Flow is that they're able to offer localized experiences across every country. So, whether you're in the UK or you're in Europe or you're in Australia, you get to shop our website in your currency of choice, depending on where you are. So that type of experience is actually, it doesn't exist quite often in the D2C space. So for us, that's huge. And I guess the last point, I think this is more future thinking, is we are going to start with paid marketing efforts on an international scale. So being able to use those price books that customers are seeing and the pricing to plug into Google and Facebook so that all of our ads are in their currency, I think that's also a huge, huge factor for us.
No, that's incredibly sophisticated and certainly speaks to the opportunity to grow market share. I think that, there's, we should talk about the challenges of cross-border, because I do think that oftentimes it does seem quite overwhelming as, especially some of these larger brands are, kind of looking to grow cross-border for the first time. And, some of the, kind of percentages here, certainly I found a bit surprising, but this whole kind of aspect around the operational factors. And, once again, it kind of dovetails with some of the, shipping and, as you talked about, duties paid and whatnot. It really can be a challenge. And, Stephen, as we were doing the research, was there anything here that really kind of stood out to you? I mean, I from conversations I have, I know it's oftentimes the operational aspect, but was there any kind of, one, theme here that you found to be surprising?
Yeah, I would just say probably some of these things that I think were evident that, whether it's international shipping or dealing with, local currency or local language, I think the key takeaway from me and for what we saw here is these are perceived barriers. And a lot of these things can be overcome with certain solutions and certain strategies that can basically tackle those issues. So when we, this is a survey of 100, multinational retailers, and I think the key, takeaway here is that many of these perceived barriers can be overcome, and so there's different ways to tackle that. And I think that we're living in a more connected society where there's a lot of innovation taking place that can enable, whether it's as Nikki mentioned, quicker international shipping or browsing in local languages. A lot of these things are doable and can be done in a short time frame. So on that note, I want to pass it to back to Deborah, but then we'll get into more challenges that Flow is going to that Rob will talk through.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen, and just obviously, Stephen, a large part of our business is bringing companies kind of cross border. What we often find is some of the, cultural and having this idea of kind of a local partner, to not only understand, some of the customs and whatnot, but also, kind of helping, retailers and brands roll out to new markets faster than building their operations in-house. And I do think that that's one of the, to me, the wonderful aspects of Flow, and, just to make it seamless, because I do think that right now many retailers are hunting for growth, and we are seeing, like I said, we're the number one kind of market interest inbound so far this year has been Southeast Asia, and this idea that it's still kind of very much white space. And I think there's a significant opportunity as we look ahead to not only go to Southeast Asia, but also just to explore even more, maybe some obscure markets where, as Nikki has said, so much about your consumer or your potential consumer through social media, and this opportunity to, address their needs and drive sales. So, I think that, Rob, we want to, kind of address this question, when exploring the top barriers that consumers experience when cross-border shopping. What do you hear from the shopper most frequently?
I mean, I think it's the reality is, as Nikki was describing it, it's death by a thousand cuts. If you're not optimized for international, it's just everything is off. It's a very unconscious shopping experience. You're seeing things in either the wrong currency or non-rounded prices, which don't resonate. If duties and taxes aren't displayed on the site, you're going to have a carrier on your doorstep a few weeks later charging you an unknown amount. You may find the shipping is super expensive or get stuck at customs. You may not be able to pay with your preferred payment method or find your card is declined. You may not know if you can get things returned or if you can get support internationally. There's a host of issues. It's not a single one. And fixing a single one doesn't solve it. You really need to solve it wholesale. And if you do, the opportunity, as you're intimating, is you can convert that to international traffic. And that's the raison d'etre for Flow, is to remove the friction, is to make it turnkey so all of these pain points can be addressed and the shopping experience remains clean and seamless. And I think some of the questions that have been coming up from the audience, maybe we could pull out a couple of them. One related to what are the pain points that we see at Flow, and maybe Nikki can comment on at Ulla on cross-border payments. There we see a few things. One, cards are often declined if you're not set up correctly for cross-border. So if you think about the last time you purchased from Europe, you may have found that your perfectly valid credit card is getting declined. And there's a technical reason why that happens. But we solve that at Flow by doing what's known as local acquiring to set up relationships in different regions so that we appear as a local merchant. And so in Ulla's case, making sure that those transactions can be captured where otherwise they may have been declined. And the second challenge is around payment methods. In many markets, cards or even digital wallets isn't the most common payment method. And so consumers in those markets want to pay the way they normally pay from a local site. So in Holland, that may be a Dale. In Germany, that may be Sofort. In Sweden, that may be Klarna. And so at Flow, we make sure that those payment methods are always available to our clients so that the consumer can pay with the payment method they would like.
Certainly, too. And jumping.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Rob. I was just going to also speak to your point about checkout. So a lot of brands these days are on Shopify, as we are. And so what's amazing, I think, about the service that Flow provides is that you actually, as a consumer in an international country, leave the Shopify checkout experience. You are redirected to a Flow checkout where it is fully Flow owning the checkout workflow. And then after a customer checks out, card is approved, that order pushes into our own Shopify instance. So not only is there no friction with payment, but also we as a brand own the customer. And I think that's really important here because a lot of other providers, you don't have the customer data. You don't have the customer shipped to information. As I mentioned, things are shipped to a facility or warehouse to consolidate and then ship out to a customer. So we were just shipping everything to one customer and we didn't own the customer. We didn't own the country. We didn't have data on them. And I think that data has really made our marketing strategies richer as well.
Nikki, can I ask you one question, which is, right, there's also this perceived, right, when kind of going cross-border, that there's a significant amount of time for a brand. Can you talk about how quickly, right, once you decided to kind of, press go, what was the time in working with Flow to kind of get everything up and running?
I would say it was about 2 to 3 weeks.
Wow.
And that was long I'd say. Just truthfully speaking, we have a very complex back end kind of tech stack with ERP systems and POS systems and WMS systems. So, Flow really we had to make sure that all orders that were coming through Flow seamlessly spoke to all systems, and then all tracking information, order confirmations, things like that had a very clear and linear kind of operation and workflow. So for us, there was a pretty heavy and cumbersome and pretty heavy testing process, I would say. So that was kind of our projected launch plan was 3 weeks, but I'd say if we were a little bit of a cleaner back end, it would be a far less complex kind of launch lead time.
That's really impressive. And I think, here on this slide, I think we've already addressed, many of the challenges, but I think as Nikki and Rob have both mentioned, right, this idea of having it, kind of seamless, because oftentimes, there's the duration, right? The, time to roll out. I mean, 2 to 3 weeks is truly unbelievable and, a game changer for a brand. And, this idea around, just visibility, once again, as Nikki said, right, the access to data to, kind of understand, right, also where to put kind of your marketing dollars, which, kind of right now can be a large expense and rent in this kind of online world. So I do think that it's quite critical. Robert, is there anything else that when, a new customer comes to you, or right, Nikki, where she had been on kind of another, working with another provider, what are they finding are the biggest challenges that they're facing?
Sure. I think there were the obvious ones, some of which we've touched on, around making sure that their shipping goes from domestic to global with different service levels and the right carriers for the right routes, making sure their checkout experience balances both the brand promise and high conversion rates, and making sure the customer experience is thought through end to end, from search to landing on the site all the way through the logistics and delivery experience. But two of the subtle challenges that brands often face, one is around tax remittance. There's an emerging theme globally where countries want to control the payment of duties and sales tax much more closely, and are no longer happy with it just being paid by the shippers at the border. And so there's many countries now that are introducing low-value goods laws, like Australia and New Zealand and Switzerland and Norway, where you need local registrations. And within Europe, there's distance selling challenges where you need to register across 27 different countries. So that's an uncomfortable new reality for brands trying to sell globally, and one where we're happy to step in and, as part of our promise to the merchant to make life easier, managers on their behalf do it once for all in each of these countries. So that's the subtle one behind the scenes, not visible to consumers, but is an enormous pain point for brands. And I think the second is we step in to become the merchant of record at the point of sale to again take over some of the risk, challenges, and regulatory issues that brands face when selling internationally. Sometimes that's around data protection. Sometimes it's around currency management and currency hedging. And other cases, it's around having relationship with many different payment providers, and brands not wanting to spend their weeks and dev effort integrating different payment methods and signing up to new payment contracts where we can step into their shoes and managing that on their behalf.
Rob, you're giving me flashbacks on many projects that we at Coresight have worked on, especially around the payments aspect. And, I think that seems to be, and actually there's an audience question around, kind of challenges and pain points specifically in cross-border payments. I don't know if you can address those.
Yeah, I think many of them I talked about earlier, the local acquiring being important, and local payment methods to improve authorization rates and payment methods. The other aspect, of course, is fraud, making sure that we can guarantee to our clients a zero chargeback risk, both on the payment side and on the friendly fraud on shipping when it's maybe shipped to incorrect addresses or declined. So we own that as a service provider so that brands don't have to become experts on international fraud.
As we look at this, kind of next slide, right? How can you provide localized e-commerce experiences? And, this is truly, I think, such a significant opportunity. And this is something that we at Coresight think about a lot, right? Is how to, first of all, many times it's the consumer's first interaction with the brand, right? They've heard about it, they've dreamed of it, and now it's kind of a reality. And so I love this slide. It speaks to so much of what I think about, right? Which is, if we want to start at the top, right? Kind of cultivating demand with like localized marketing. And there was a question actually for Nikki, which was from the audience, and thank you, around, have you used live streaming or how have you kind of, gotten your brand, and how have you kind of tailored your marketing?
Yeah, so actually, we have not used live stream for customer experience, I think was the question. And I have seen that starting to become a trend as customers are more comfortable with Zoom and other video providers to be able to consult with a customer experience representative. But in terms of marketing, I think that, as you mentioned, social media is not, is not a domestic tool. It's an international tool that we connect with so many different potential consumers and consumers with. So, I think social media has been a huge driver for us. And also our email marketing strategy at Flow has helped to uncover different nations so clearly, and different product assortments that different nations are maybe gravitating towards. So we've actually tailored our marketing, email marketing, SMS marketing, and social media strategies around, which customers might kind of gravitate to certain products and what they, and, really just personalize the experience for them.
Well, I think that that's also really critical, Rob, right now, right, where we're, especially in Europe, where, we're continuing to see this ebb and flow in terms of stores being open and stores being closed. And, we're hearing a significant demand from, many specialty retailers as they're trying to understand, kind of cross-border e-commerce, right? How do they, first of all, understand the demand, but then also, right, if they're going to kind of, jump in, how do they translate, especially Europe, right, where you have, so many different languages, and even in certain countries, right, you have many languages. Can you address that? Because I know it's a conversation we've had many times, and what I don't know if we always allay everybody's fears, but that is, with Flow, I think there's huge opportunity.
Yeah, we encourage brands to not try to get the perfect shopping experience in 200 different countries, but just start off and peel away the onion layers one by one, open up the world, make sure there's a decent shopping experience for each country, and iterate from there. So on the question of, I think the table stakes is making sure you've got local currency and that they're cleanly rounded prices, whether those are price books or using exchange rates and then rounding, either or. Nikki mentioned both of those earlier. Making sure duties and taxes are displayed and shipping is cheap and efficient and payment methods available. I think that's table stakes for a decent international shopping experience. And then from there, you can build on it. You can tweak different country experiences. At Flow, we've got deep testing built into the platform. So our client success work with the client partners to find the perfect setting and test different setups. Similarly, on language, you're asking about language with pre-translated checkouts, where language is more of an issue because it looks complicated and it may be off-putting to see it in a different language, where there may be less of a business case to do that on the product pages. You may have thousands of SKUs and product pages, and there may not be a business case for managing the language on each of those, particularly if it's a very visual page. But I think the main message is get out there, do it, turn on the countries with a decent shopping experience, and then invest from there. Don't try to spend years preparing for the perfect shopping experience before launching.
I have to say there's definitely some brands, we've been working with for quite some time. And there is this, one in particular, it's been like 3 years because they're so concerned about everything just being absolutely perfect. And I do think this idea of like, just jump in, try it and test it. And right now, right, we don't, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that is, really an important point. And especially I think with the speed that Nikki alluded to, it is kind of really mission critical. I think that one other question I have for you, Rob, and would love to hear what, kind of Nikki's experience has been, right? Where, once again, by, kind of geo, right? Consumers are used to, whether it's an embedded video or, right, it's, kind of many more, right, like PDPs so that they can better understand the product. It sounds like, you have this incredibly, once again, localized approach. Can you talk about just, how you think about that? Because it is certainly different by geography.
Yeah. There are broadly two approaches. You can either start building out specific site content by country or by culture. That may need different instances. So on Shopify, you may need to have as many different instances as you want to have localized content. or you can rely on converting them on a single instance, keep it visual, and keep the shopping experience that's being localized to pricing and promotions and advertising and driving them on the paid marketing front, but not investing in changing your site each time. Most of the clients we see are in that second category. They're not trying to develop the perfect in-country shopping experience with different content each time. The business case doesn't seem to be there for that, but rather want to fine-tune the settings so the shopping experience is highly tuned at Flow. And that's what we do at Flow. We help them on all the things we talked about. We try not to touch the content side of a client site and leave that for them to decide if they want to develop specific region-specific content.
So, Nikki, I mean, what has Ulla Johnson done to localize its e-commerce experiences? Because to me, this is often, the greatest challenge for a brand.
Yeah, certainly. So, first and foremost, I think we kind of took the approach that Rob had mentioned, like we turned on. We turned on and then we assessed where we were at. We got the pulse of what some of the analytics looked like and where there was opportunity or missed opportunity. And from there, I think we started to build out some localized strategies and A/B testing to then better understand if something was going to work better in an experience. And to put some color around that, Canada, for example, we started to see that our order volume was there, but our AOV was maybe lower. So a Canadian customer was a bit more price sensitive. So we realized that shipping rates to Canada were actually not, were quite expensive for the products that they were shipping, that we were shipping to Canada. So what we ran was an A/B test, free shipping versus not free shipping within Canada. We promoted on the free shipping experience a site-wide banner that said now offering free shipping to Canada. And of course, you only got that if you were in the experience where shipping was free. And we saw through the data that there was an uptick in sales from consumers and who had free shipping. Not only was there an increase in overall sales, we did see that our AOVs tended to increase in our AURs. So people were adding more to their cart with kind of that barrier taken down of shipping. So for us, that was how we catered that localized experience within Canada, but we continuously look to evolve within each nation or each region based on the data that we're seeing. We kind of then go with strategies on how we can localize and optimize.
And can I ask you a follow-up to that, which is, because right now, the world is really your oyster. How are you kind of prioritizing, different geographies? And how is Flow helping you kind of also understand the opportunity and, kind of optimize for these, different customer tastes and preferences?
Yeah, so I think we've definitely seen a high affinity for English-speaking countries with our product. Canada, UK, various parts of Europe, Australia, and that's kind of baseline. And we've always known we've had an interest there. But what really, Flow had helped us to really shed light on some new areas of opportunity, such as the Netherlands and Singapore and, the UAE and all these kind of other micro areas where there are these really loyal, dedicated customers. And we've started to kind of cater to these customers in a different way and treating them like VIP and royalty. I mean, they're spending upwards of $20,000 with us since we've launched, and that's a customer that we want to keep, and we want to keep engaged and interested. So I think the visibility and the way that we're able to really zoom in and zoom out has helped us to grow the overall kind of global business.
No, that's really helpful. I mean, I think that, as we, kind of look ahead a few slides and just kind of think about, the impact of what we've seen in kind of 2020. I mean, Rob, these numbers are just truly outstanding. I mean, what's your take? I mean, to me, it's just kind of like almost like a pause and reflect on where, what we went through last year in terms of just the significant growth, but also I think it speaks to what's ahead, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of research has gone into the question, I think from Coresight and others, what has COVID meant for e-commerce and what's going to look like post-COVID? And I think it goes without saying that it's accelerated e-commerce purchases over the last 12 months. I think year on year, we've seen over 100% growth in e-com through our clients on average relative to the prior year. what does it mean post-COVID? I think there's a lot of first-time buyers, first-time either e-commerce or first-time cross-border buyers who have now done it the first time and over time will become habitual cross-border buyers. And I think clearly that's the future that's opening up. Consumers feeling comfortable purchasing without regard to where the merchant is. And what our goal with clients is to make sure that the shopping experience is so clean, easy, cheap for the end consumer that they become loyal fans from that point onwards. And I think COVID, for all its misfortune for society, has helped e-commerce in an enormous way to introduce a whole new segment, a large segment of consumers globally to cross-border shopping.
Nikki, can you talk to the experience that that you've seen over the holidays, and just in general? I think if we can look through your results.
Yeah. So I can kind of speak to these numbers and what they mean for us, but the international is about 3% of our sales prior to launching on Flow. And since launching, we have now seen that it's picked up to 16% of our total sales, which is just incredible from, as I mentioned, turning on a tool. Since this kind of number has been recorded, we even worked to further optimize and kind of localize those experiences. And now we're kind of seeing the last 2 months, we've been trending at 18%. So first and foremost, that was that turnkey solution I mentioned. And then we continue to evolve as we tweak and optimize. 75% decrease in delivery speed. So as mentioned before, we were shipping to California, then shipping out. So that kind of window has significantly reduced. We are able to ship with DHL Express within 3 to 5 days. To ship to Australia within 4 or 5 days, like that's just incredible. It's halfway across the world or more. And then we've seen a 4.5% in just overall 4.5% increase in our gross sales since last year, which is obviously speaks to the tools that we now have at our disposal. And then 64 is the amount of countries that we've shipped to since launching with Flow, and we launched in March. So we are also missing all of Q1 here if we're looking at this on an annual kind of term, but this is really within 3 quarters. So it's really exciting to see.
I mean, the 64 number is just, I'm almost speechless because this really sums it up, because I think that, there are also so many brands who are, kind of on the precipice. This is something that would be great. Like I said, we actually have one client we've been spending 3 years on, just this very topic, but this just shows you, right? Just kind of like, jump in with both eyes open and both feet. And you just don't know the possibilities until you try it, right, Nikki?
Absolutely. And, I think we've recognized what we call power shoppers in some of these regions. We've seen people in Brazil shopping. We've seen, there is a customer out there. And in our case, she's usually a she, and she's out there and she's dedicated and comes back for more and more. And she's not just a first-time customer, she's a repeat customer. And it's just really amazing to see kind of the global scale in which we have these power shoppers and how that all really sums up to kind of our total. And then, obviously helps to supplement the key markets that we already know we have a loyal customer base in.
Great. And I know we're almost ending, kind of the close of this amazing conversation. But I do want to at least address a few of the audience questions. And, if we can look at, what is the single most challenging aspect of launching a global strategy? And I think, Nikki and Rob, we'd love to hear from you both.
I think, I don't know about challenge or opportunity, but I think there's a category of things which is, you can't expect the perfect experience out of the box. So Nikki's hands-on approach at Ulla is fantastic. And I think that she is to credit for such an enormous lift, nearly 500% growth in international sales. But beyond the sudden change, the step change to an improved customer experience out of the box with Flow, it requires work to dig into each market then to test different settings. Nikki was referring earlier to a free shipping promotion test. And that's what we see working with many of our clients. Our client success team will lean in and try to guide or do on behalf of our clients to see how can we take the top 10, 20 markets and test different configurations, because the right answer, the perfect customer experience, varies not just by geography, but by category and even by brand. So there is no one size fits all. But that's the challenge and opportunity. Keep working at it. Take your top 10, 20 markets where maybe 80% of your international sales will come from, and test different settings. What promotions work best? What price rounding rules work best? How should we display duties and taxes for maximum conversion rates? What payment methods should be displayed in which order? Which shippers should we offer? There's all kinds of questions. There's about 70 or 80 different tests that we run at Flow, and any one of them could lead to a 30, 40% lift in conversion rates. And once you start stacking them on, you can quickly get to triple-digit conversion rate improvements. For me, that's the biggest opportunity and effort required when you've launched with Flow.
And I think, Nikki, the slide that kind of was the big aha, I think for many of us, if you want to think about kind of taking the other side of it, not the challenge but the opportunity, if you can help us kind of go back just in your mind to when you decided to work with Flow and where you are now. I mean, I would assume that the growth has been kind of nothing short of exponential. But where do you still see opportunity, and what does that mean for 21?
Yeah, I think we continue to see opportunity in adjusting some of our price books. We, historically have been a wholesale-driven brand, and I think over the last 5 years have seen a significant increase in our direct-to-consumer kind of arm of our business. And for us, what's kind of was a challenge and now is not such a challenge, and where there's continuous opportunity, is really in price books. For some of our biggest regions, our product that is so well known to our customer ends up being so expensive for them, and that's really a deterrent, especially when looking at the competitive landscape and like-minded brands that are maybe European-based that can offer a more competitive price point. So for us, I think it's been really helpful to set our own price books and to understand as a brand where we want to take certain hits to then gain a wider audience. So, we can tweak our pricing so that it's more competitive, so that we can only capture that much more demand. And we have the ability to do that and to play with that on a SKU by SKU basis. And our catalog is extensive. We upload about 120 to 140 products every 6 to 8 weeks. So for us, having that level of flexibility is kind of unheard of. So I think that continues to be an area of opportunity and growth for us to play around with some of those numbers, and then really take that back to the team too, and adjust our buying strategy. This is our first year of working with Flow, but I think for next year, we're really thinking through what does this mean in our planning and our merchandising strategies, and how does this affect our vertical production arm? Are we going to leave goods overseas before importing them? And I think that, it started here, but now it's becoming a kind of much more involved conversation internally that affects many different team members and key players.
I'm not sure I've ever used this in a sentence, but I'm absolutely gobsmacked by the success you had, Nikki. I mean, it really is, because it's all, right. It's all in the numbers. And I think that, as we look to kind of wrap up our conversation today, although this is, my favorite topic, for retailers who are looking to go global, right? I mean, you just kind of have to jump in and, roll up your sleeves and, kind of, test and learn. And I think that, Nikki and Rob talked to us a lot about this today. For 21, I do think that we're going to continue to see significant growth in e-commerce on a global scale. And, certainly due to some of the restrictions, but also right in 2020, we had many consumers who had not shopped online before, who are now online customers. And it is completely changing, right? The way that, consumers look to, I think, learn about new brands, experience, and also, right, there's always that, feeling of discovery, right? If I end up being kind of this, right, like key opinion customer, and I've discovered Ulla Johnson, then I can tell my friends, right? It goes back to kind of elevating one's social status, but also this idea that, there are these amazing brands that, are yet to be discovered still by some. And then in terms of compelling markets, right? I mean, like I mentioned early on, we've had a lot of inbounds, and, we're 5-6 weeks into 21 on specifically Southeast Asia. And I will say in the back half of 20, there was also a lot of interest in South America. So I think these kind of non-European kind of countries and regions where, I think that retailers are like, wow, this seems interesting. They're big markets, and we haven't even thought about it, right? Many have thought about going to Europe. They haven't done it. So that to me is, kind of first in some cases on the list, and then expanding to some of these others. And so I think that, lastly, just to kind of, sum it all up, there's huge opportunities in global cross-border, and having a partner like Flow, I think, completely changes the ability for one to make what can be a difficult decision, right? Whether it's for a board or a C-suite. And so I think that having this opportunity, Rob and Nikki, to chat with you today was truly my pleasure, and I wish everyone all the luck in 21. For those on the call, we have a Retail Tech Innovator Showcase next week, and hope you can join us. And Rob and Nikki, thanks for an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikki.